What is something illegal you have done and got away without getting caught? I stole my own car from the tow-impound lot. Best part was getting the certified letter months later that they were going to auction it if I didn't come and pay for it. You should have gone back with the letter and demanded to see the car. When I went backpacking through Europe, I bought an airsoft pistol in Italy. A replica Beretta 92 FS, nickel plated. It looked real. It was heavy. I could have pointed it at you and you would think it was real. Because I'm a fucking idiot, I decided to bring it home to Canada with me. I packed it in my checked baggage, big backpack, and didn't think anything of it until I arrived back in Toronto and was asked to put my bag in the X-ray machine at customs. At this point I realized, holy fuck, I'm bringing a gun into the country. Replica handguns are completely illegal. I would have been in a shitload of trouble, and I started to panic. Lucky me, I remembered exactly how I had packed the pistol, so when I laid the bag on the conveyor belt, I laid it down so that the X-ray wouldn't see the profile of the pistol. When the bag went through the machine, you could clearly see the gun, but it was at an angle facing away, so rather than a pistol shape, it was just a metal rectangle. The inspection agent / guy / whatever stopped the belt, pointed directly at the chunk of metal, and said, "What's that?" I looked him dead in the eye and said, "It's a toy." The next few seconds felt like an eternity. I could feel my pulse pounding in my neck. I was terrified, but then he just said, "Okay, welcome home," and let me go. I retrieved my bag, walked into the main terminal, then went and threw up in the nearest garbage can. Yay, I was dumb, but I got away with it. The summer after I graduated high school, my best friend and I bought season passes to Six Flags and decided to go every day because it was only an hour plus away. A week or two into our summer, Six Flags introduced their fast passes. We immediately bought them, jumped the line, and were hooked. This was going to be the best summer of our lives, but the fast passes were like $20 each, which adds up if you're going every day. Luckily for us, the stupid idiots printed them on business cards and punched out a hole when you rode. So we just printed our own at home on my friend's dad's super nice printer and rode the shit out of every ride we could. We started making friends with the ride operators, and they'd start telling us what color the ink would be the next week, so we could stay ahead of the law and the suckers in line. After 2 months or so, they started printing them on plastic, but I worked at a plastic factory that used plastic sheeting that was the same thickness, and we were still able to print them if I cut the sheets down to size. We got to ride the rest of the summer out in style, but the next year they introduced the Tamagotchi looking fast passes, and I knew that I'd been beaten. It was the best summer of my life, and it was really thrilling to feel like I was getting away with something that was technically illegal, but also was a completely victimless crime. Stole a Blue Angels flag from the hangar they were parked in. When I was in the Navy, the Blue Angels visited the air base I was stationed at. They proceeded to kick all of our planes out of our hangar, and I had to fix our birds out in the rain. In a fit of contempt, on the last day they were there, I went into the mess and stole the flag hanging from the overhead beams. I still have the flag and wear it like a cape from time to time. I once overslept for an oral English exam, so I forged the letter I received with a date and moved it to following week. Showed it to my English teacher, and she said it was probably a mistake, but I had to show it to the school dean as well to get approval for a reschedule. I showed the forged letter to him, and he instantly found a mistake I made in the letter and just casually said that the letter looked badly copied. I was sweating bullets at that point because forging a letter for an exam is a pretty harsh offense and could have gotten me suspended. But he just shrugged it off and gave me permission for a reschedule. I guess since I wasn't a troublemaker, he just gave me a pass. The dean was one of the cooler teachers at school though. He loved SpongeBob, and if he gave you detention work, you had to make a SpongeBob figure with a sponge and such. My friends and I didn't pay for our dinner at Steak and Shake this past weekend. I stood waiting at the register trying to pay for 20 minutes, but no one came to take my money. It was 12:30 AM before we left. This might come as a surprise to people who've never worked at restaurants before, but it happens really often. At this restaurant I used to work at, I've had people walk away only to come back the next day, apologize and pay and give the same reasoning you did. Not sure how it works where you're from, but a lot of restaurants here in Amsterdam will charge the waiter or whoever was responsible for watching your table. I was visiting the beach, and when walking home with a friend from a bar at 4 AM on a Sunday night, we came across a jet ski on the beach, being bounced around by the waves. My friend convinced me to ride it back with him the next mile to where we were staying. So we rode it in the ocean in pitch black, while a storm was out in the distance. Cool, not scary. When we got to our place, we rode it around until the sun came up, and then I found the jet ski registration, found the guy on Facebook, played the good guy, and messaged him, and told him, hey, I found your jet ski at X location on the beach, then went inside. It was a pretty thrilling experience. I don't know how illegal it was considering it was a jet ski just left in the ocean, and I returned it, but it was still pretty fun. Assisted in semi-stealing a car. Almost 2 decades ago my cousin calls my dad and says his car broke down. As my dad has friends with heavy equipment, he figured my dad could get a trailer to tow it on. So my dad, my uncle and I go pick up a flatbed tow truck from a friend of his and drive 2 hours to pick up the car. We find it near where it should be on the side of the highway, so we load it up and go to a rest stop to secure it on the truck better. As my dad and my uncle are attaching straps, I'm looking at the car and notice something is odd. My cousin's car, late 80s Audi, had broken speakers for whatever reason. They all stopped work, so instead of replacing them with normal speakers, he used house tower speakers, big ones at that back seat and passenger seat. I'm noticing there aren't any tower speakers in the car. I pointed this out, and they stop and start looking at the car, then check the plate number. They don't match. Cousin had a vanity plate. My dad immediately hooks the call, raises the bed, and lets it roll off into a space at the rest area. We hop into the truck and drive off to find the car. We find it less than a mile away. Audi reliability jokes aside, what are the odds of 2 identical orders, same year, color, and even rims and tires being broken down that close to each other? When I was a teenager, my Labrador got out of the yard, and I finally found him at the pound with a bullet in his shoulder. I had to put him down. I inadvertently found out who did it. I spray painted his Corvette. After he got it repainted, I did it again. Editing for clarity. This was a small town in the late 70s. I did tell the cops when he was shot, but we didn't know by who. They said they could do nothing. As far as I remember, even when I found out who did it, they said they couldn't help me. I found out who did it because my sister went to a party and a guy there was talking about a dog he shot. He lived in the same block where animal control picked my injured dog up. Of course I took my dog to the vet, but as a poor 16-year-old, I did not have the funds needed for surgery. If I recall correctly, it was $400, which would have been a small fortune for me. I had the vet put him down. He was a sweet lab. I bawled my eyes out for weeks. One of the local cops was a family friend. He put 2 and 2 together, and after the second paint job, he stopped by my work and mentioned what happened to this guy's car and looked at me and said he hoped it wouldn't happen again. I took the hint and left him alone after that. This all happened over 40 years ago, but to the best of my recollection, that is what happened. I went into CVS for 3 things: deodorant, the specific pencils I like to use, and a notebook. I grabbed the deodorant, perused the office supply aisle, and saw they didn't have the pencils I wanted, so I decided it wasn't worth it to get the notebook either. Feeling like my trip was a failure, I left. Walked out of CVS with the deodorant in my hand. No alarm went off, no employee stopped me. About 3 steps outside of the door, I realized I just stole, however unintentionally. So I walked back in, bought the deodorant and 3 other items out of guilt. Grand theft deodorant. I accidentally shoplifted some pudding cups once. I was at Target and was buying a couple of large bags of dog food which were in the basket part of the cart and several smaller items that were in the top part of the cart. I had tossed the pudding cups into the basket part before I put the dog food bags in and forgot they were there when I put all the smaller items on the belt to be rung up. They were hidden from view when the dog food bags were scanned. I saw them when I was putting the dog food bags into the trunk. If the lines weren't so long I would have gone back to pay for them, but 20+ minutes for a 99-cent item, I can live with that. If it were a more expensive item I would have returned to pay for it. I work at Target and basically, we are told that if someone walks out with something they forgot to pay for, it's on the cashiers for not checking. One lady called and said that she forgot to pay for a bottle of wine and the team lead told them they'll just mark it out. Basically, don't worry about it, but don't try to steal. I stole a police radio from a TABC officer once, drunk as hell and underage at a club. I was on the dance floor at some club and an elderly lady asked if I wanted to dance. I was like, fuck yeah, cougar action. She then asked me to follow her, and I was like, fuck yeah, this lady fucks. She then showed me her badge, and I was like, fuck. Officer took me to the back office of the club and threatened to take me to jail and decided on just giving me a fine. When she went to make a copy of my ID, she left her radio on the desk. I shoved that shit in my pants. I have no fucking clue why I did this. Went outside and called my friends and told them we have to leave. Got in the car and showed them what my drunk ass did, and we all had a great laugh. Never paid the ticket and never received a warrant, so I guess I got away with it. I once kept a dead otter in my freezer after finding it on the side of the road. In the UK this can get a hefty fine and prison time without a license. Once I found out I released the dead otter into the wild. It was a bit like Free Willy, but with less movement. How do you apply for a dead otter owning license? You apply at the dead otter licensing office. I used to have a total lead foot. One day, I was driving to my ex-wife's parents' house by myself. They lived in a small town right off of the freeway. Now, on the freeway I was driving about 130 km per hour, which was standard for most drivers. When you pull off the freeway, it immediately drops to 45 km per hour. So, I pull onto this main drag and start driving through the town. I'm about a mile down when suddenly I notice a police car pull up behind me. I look down and see that I'm driving at 70 km per hour. A few things hit all at once. First, I couldn't afford a ticket. I was 20 miles over. I would have ended up with a $200 plus ticket just because I failed to decelerate. I was only 3 blocks from my in-laws, and the officer hadn't turned on his lights yet. For reasons only known to me, I immediately pulled over, turned off the car and started walking. The officer pulled up behind me, not knowing what to do, but still with no lights turned on. I just kept walking without turning around. I get to my in-laws and tell them what happened. They tell me that I have to go back for my car, so I do. The officer was gone. No consequences whatsoever, never received a ticket in the mail, never heard a thing. I would never ever do it again. And that's how I got out of a major speeding violation.